Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papam.
10 years ago, on March the 13th, 2013, Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio stepped onto the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica and introduced himself to the world as Pope Francis. A few months after his election as Pope, his first trip outside of Rome took him to the island of Lampedusa in July of 2013. On the island, the Holy Father celebrated Holy Mass with about 10,000 refugees and islanders. He also called on Europe to show more solidarity with those in need and sharply criticized what he called the globalization of indifference, in which, rather than having compassion for others, we become apathetic towards their suffering.
It is a lesson for the whole world, the whole world. If you put the center on the poor, so you put everybody on mission, because mission begins with love, with charity. Otherwise, your word has no impact if it is not accompanied by a gesture. And that's a characteristic of Pope Francis. And I think this is a great message for the Church. That's part of his originality and of his provocation. He is prophetic in that sense. He is prophetic, telling us we cannot be indifferent to the situation of poverty in the world.
Like his two predecessors, Pope Francis traveled a lot in the first 10 years of his pontificate. He visited the continents of America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Wherever he went, he encouraged the faithful, challenged the powerful, and criticized injustices. His visits to Muslim countries were evidence of his commitment to interreligious dialogue, another key focus of his pontificate. In 2019, Francis signed a joint document in Abu Dhabi with the Grand Imam of Cairo's Al-Azhar University. Both strongly condemned religious extremism in this document.
I think he had a huge impact also in his initiatives for the poor, his initiative for interreligious dialogue, the Declaration of Abu Dhabi. I think it is so important for the peace in the world. It is not easy to deal with the Muslim, the Islamic community. So it is difficult, and there is a real need of encounter, of better understanding, of dialogue in a word, And so he has been doing many efforts in that direction.
On his trip to Canada in July of 2022, the Pope apologized to the country's indigenous peoples for the Church's role in their persecution. The abuse crisis within the Church has been another major challenge of the past 10 years. Pope Francis has not only worked towards reform in this area, but he's also brought about reform in the Curia and is currently working to integrate the principle of synodality in the Church.
I think in the legacy of Pope Francis, synodality will probably remain as the most important of his contribution. The Catholic Church, I would say, is very clerical. It's very grounded on the ordained ministry. That's at the center of the attention, the bishops, the priests. But we lack awareness of the priesthood of the baptized. I think synodality is a key factor for the future.
With Pope Francis, not only a new era has begun. Close collaborators such as Cardinal Marc Ouellet, who served Francis for a long time as prefect of the Congregation for Bishops, emphasize that despite the different charisms of the popes, the continuation of the work of the Church is guaranteed.
We had so different popes, so different, and that's in the continuity of the work of the Holy Spirit in history. He brings us the right man at the right moment, And that it doesn't mean that they are infallible in everything they do, all with limits and also mistakes, but they are men guided by the Holy Spirit. I've seen that in Pope Francis. So every week, an hour with him, we've been addressing so many questions, so many appointments. I've seen him react as a man of God that is listening to the Spirit, having his signs to discern exactly the motion of the Spirit, of the good Spirit, and a man that is also able to withdraw when he thinks, I went too far.